What is going on, anyone? I'm Sir James from GamerFusion.com, and today I'm here to give you my review for Valiant Hearts: The Great War. In this game, the set tone is around World War I, where the years are between 1914 and 1918. In this game, you're going to be playing as 4 unlikely heroes, which the war tends to bring these characters together, where they build a strong friendship, and they also deal with some of the sacrifices that the war happens to bring. Now, the main tone of the game is to tell a story of the events during World War I, where you're greeted with a lot of information what happened during the time, and of course you're getting a strong relationship and build between these 4 characters in the game, which is telling a breathtaking yet saddened story. The visual aspect of this game is one of its strongest points. Just visually, this game was really done well. From the moments where there's bright and colorful things going on, where people are happy and cheering, all the way straight to the battlefield, where you see all kinds of devastation and bodies just lying around the battlefield as they're piling up. Just the emotional tone, just the visual stuff itself is a really good job, because not only is it providing narration for the story, but since the characters don't really do much talking, it's up to the visual aspect of the game to kind of, to sell the story, which I think the game did a really good job doing that. And it has kind of like this comic book feel to it, because there's going to be some sections where it has like these little clips being added into the gameplay, which gives it that comic book feeling, which makes sense because in the game you're also awarded Uplay points, which you could go and download actual comic book strips for the game, which is really interesting and really enjoyable to read. As for the gameplay is not the strongest aspect for this game at all. Pretty much you're going to be doing one of 3 things. Daily chores, puzzle solving, which is a lot of, and some minor combat. The daily chores task is basically you enter a section in the game, you're going to have one specific main goal. But in order to get to that main goal, you have to do all these little small tasks and help the other soldiers around. For example, a soldier may be looking for an item and you have 4 to 5 others looking for a particular item, so you have to go help each one out. In order to get this item, you need to help this guy out, and you have to keep on going back and forth, and it really gets repetitive throughout the entire game. Same with the puzzle solving. Some of the puzzle solvings can be a bit creative and fits really well with the tone of what they're trying to go with, but other times it just seems like pointless puzzle solving that is trying to delay the game when you're trying to continue on the story. Because, the story aspect is the strongest, but when you don't have the gameplay to help along with that, then it's not going to work out quite well. And of course, you do get a little bit of combat. You're not giving a gun or anything like that. Basically, you get a chance to throw some grenades, you get a couple of different boss fights, and you get a really cool section, which I think is by far my favorite out of this entire game, is there's a couple sections where you're in kind of like a car chase. Well, one of them is more like charging onto the battlefield, and another one is kind of like a mini boss fight, where it has like these musical tones that fit in, and it was just done really well, and I thought that was probably like the most enjoyable part of the game. But there's some other cool aspects, like there's a part in the game where you're going to do like a prison escape, but I'm not going to tell you who it was. Other things like that, which I thought was done well because it had more of a stealthier approach to it. But at the same time, you also had to do all those daily chores, helping like 6 or 7 different soldiers just to get a pair of wire cutters. I mean, when that could have been summed up just by a couple little tasks before you set off and then leave it at that. But basically, it's just a repetitive process from start to finish that tends to drag on instead of continuing the story.
August 1st, 1914. After the assassination of Prince Franz Ferdinand of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the German Empire declares war on Russia. Because of established alliances, France is preparing for conflict. A few hours after the announcement of the general mobilization, German civilians living in France are asked to leave the country. Karl is one of them.
As for the sound aspect of the game, this is another one of its strongest aspects, which fits really well with the tone of the actual story. The music setting for the game, no matter where you are, is fitting the tone quite well. Whether it's a happy moment in the game or one of the most saddest moments in the game, just the music department alone, along with the strong story, fit it really well. Those two combinations together is what made the game good, just the gameplay was lacking to make it even better. Even some of the cool sections, as I mentioned during the gameplay, is the car chase sequence where you have like these musical numbers that kicked in, and it was really clever and it was fitting in really well. And as for the people, you don't really hear any of the main characters talk. I mean, you could hear a little bit of slight English, but a lot of times it's kind of just like mumbling, and you may hear like a yup or to the left, and then they continue to mumble a bit more. But, you know, that's all you really need, because the narration itself is doing a really good job, which I gotta hand it down to the narrator of this actual game. Did a splendid job. His tone and everything just fit the actual story together, and it was one of the strongest aspects. As for the lifespan, is this a game that people are going to be coming back to play more of, or is this something like a one-time playthrough? For me, it was more like a one-time playthrough. I mean, there are collectibles in the game and some nice information that's being provided with the title. For example, there's about 100 different collectibles that you can gather if you want to get the achievement, which if you actually do a good job your first playthrough, you could actually almost get all of it. For me, I happened to get a total of 92 out of the 100 collectibles in the game with just my first playthrough, so meaning I do have a little bit of an incentive to go back and try to get the remaining collectibles. But also at the same time, the game provides a lot of helpful information. By information, meaning that it gives you a bunch of different facts of what happened during World War I, different events depending on what level you are, which sometimes can get distracting because it has like a big icon on the top right corner almost each section that you go in, which can get annoying, but unfortunately you can't disable. But it is there, so for those who want to learn a little bit more information about World War I, it does have that information, which I thought was really done. But just the replay value, to be honest, is not really high. I mean, the fact that the game is extremely repetitive, the collectibles are easy to find, this is something that you may play once or twice and probably forget about it, or it might be something you come back to like months or years from now just to play a game to kind of give you that emotional tone once again. But that's really about it. As for the innovation here is the way that they told the story. Most games when it comes to World War I or even World War II involve in a first-person shooter or third-person aspect, but this one involved it in a side-scrolling where they're basically trying to tell the story of the people that were involved in the war, you know, the issues that the people had to go through, the sickness, the disease, the bombs, losing friendship, losing the ones that they love, and just during the heartful moments during the time, which the emotional story did a really excellent job. So in the end, I'm actually going to give this game a 7 out of 10. As I stated, the two strongest aspects that held up the game from becoming lower is the actual soundtrack and the storytelling. Just the gameplay was way too repetitive, and I wish it could have been something a bit more. But hopefully maybe in the second installment, based on what we got at the end of the credits, hopefully we may see something then. But until then, I'm Sir James from Gamer Fusion, and always remember guys, Gamer Fusion empowers your gaming.